In the swirling silence of Vortex Prime, where fractured stars cast spectral light over abandoned corridors, one man's kindness would ignite a revolution. Orion Kalin did not seek destiny. Destiny found him cradling a dying creature whose existence could unravel empires. In a galaxy ruled by bloodlines and betrayal, trust was the rarest weapon, and Orion was about to wield it. Human found an injured beast and saved it, not knowing it was the pet of the Baroness. Blood dripped from Orion's fingertips as he cradled the creature in his arms. It labored, breathing a whisper against his chest. The white-striped fur, matted with crimson, was unlike anything he'd encountered in his 7 years as Vortex Prime Outpost's only veterinarian. Whatever this animal was, it wasn't in any of his databases. "Hold on," he murmured, trudging through the station's maintenance corridor. The creature's claws dug deeper into his forearm as if understanding his words. The service lift groaned as it carried them down to level 3, where his clinic sat nestled between cargo bays and forgotten storage units. The station's designers had made it clear where animals ranked in their priorities. Orion had been returning from a supply run to the outer docks when he'd found it collapsed near an emergency airlock, bleeding from what appeared to be energy weapon wounds. Who would shoot such a magnificent creature? "Dr. Kalin, you're bleeding all over my clean floor again," his automated assistant chirped as he stumbled through the clinic door. "Mute protocols." Orion commanded, gently placing the creature on his examination table. "Full xenobiology scan priority alpha." The overhead scanner hummed to life, bathing the animal in soft blue light. Orion worked quickly, applying pressure to the worst of the wounds, while the scanner compiled its data. "Unknown species," the system announced. "Closest match. Felida sapiens. Variant 78%. Confidence. "That can't be right," Orion muttered, reaching for a regenerative gel pack. Felida sapiens were sentient humanoids from the Cygnus Quadrant. Aristocratic, powerful, and notoriously private. This was clearly an animal, albeit an unusually intelligent one. The creature's eyes snapped open, startling amber against the black sclera, and it hissed, revealing needle-sharp fangs. Its paw lashed out with surprising strength, nearly catching Orion's face easy. Orion said, keeping his voice low and steady, "I'm trying to help you." The creature stilled those alien eyes, studying him with an intensity that sent shivers down his spine. There was something almost person-like in that gaze. Orion administered a mild sedative, just enough to ease the pain without forcing unconsciousness. As the medication took effect, the creature's muscles relaxed, and it sank back onto the table with a sound disturbingly close to a sigh. The scanner beeped, with completed results, displaying a holographic anatomy that made Orion's eyebrows rise. The creature's internal structure was fascinating, more complex than any non-sentient species he'd treated. Multiple hearts, reinforced skeletal structure, neural pathways that suggested high intelligence. "What are you?" he whispered, gently. Cleaning the wounds, the worst injury was a precision strike that had nearly severed a major artery, too precise to be accidental. Someone had wanted this creature to bleed out slowly. 4 stellar cycles later, Orion slumped against his desk, exhausted but satisfied. The creature slept peacefully in a recovery chamber, its vital signs stable. He'd had to improvise with the treatment, combining protocols for 3 different species and hoping his educated guesses wouldn't kill the patient. His comm unit chimed with an incoming station alert. Orion swiped it open with a blood-stained finger. "Attention all personnel," Commander Vaylor's voice announced. "The diplomatic vessel, Crimson Claw, has requested emergency docking privileges. Security protocols will be elevated to Level 2 until further notice. All non-essential personnel are to remain in designated areas." Orion frowned. Diplomatic vessels rarely visited Vortex Prime. The station was too remote, too unimportant in the grand scheme of interstellar politics. A soft trill from the recovery chamber drew his attention. The creature was awake, ears flattened against its skull, eyes wide, with what Orion could only describe as fear. "You heard that, didn't you?" Orion said, approaching slowly. "Something about that ship has you spooked." "Thing." The creature's gaze locked with his, and then deliberately, with purpose that no mere animal should possess it, extended a paw toward him. Orion hesitated, then reached out. The creature's paw pressed against his palm in a jolt of something. Electricity communications passed between them. "What the hell?" Orion gasped, pulling back. The overhead speakers crackled again. "Doctor, Kalen to Docking Bay 3. Commander Vaylor ordered. "Bring your medical kit. We have a diplomatic situation." Orion glanced at the creature, who was now trying to rise from the chamber. "Oh, no, you don't," he said gently, but firmly, pressing it back down. "You've lost too much blood, whatever's going on. You're staying right here until you're stable." The creature growled, but its strength was clearly depleted. It sank back, those intelligent eyes never leaving Orion's face. "I'll be back," Orion promised, grabbing his emergency kit. "Computer secure, recovery chamber. 1 no access, except medical override. Kalen Alpha 3. As the clinic door slid shut behind him, Orion couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just been drawn into something far more complex than treating an injured animal. Whatever this creature was, someone had tried to kill it, and now a diplomatic vessel had arrived with suspicious timing. Nexus 7 was about to become a lot more interesting than the backwater assignment Orion had signed up for. Orion returned to his clinic. 3 stellar cycles later, shoulders tight with tension. The diplomatic situation had been nothing more than Commander Vaylor parading him in front of some minor officials searching for a lost asset. They'd asked pointed questions about unusual creatures, scanning his face for signs of deception. Orion had played dumb, citing the hundreds of exotic pets that passed through the station with traveling merchants. He wasn't sure why he'd lied. Something about the officials' cold eyes and the calculated way they described their missing property had triggered his protective instincts. The clinic doors slid open, and Orion froze. The recovery chamber was empty, its glass dome pushed aside. "Damn it," he muttered, dropping his kit and scanning the room. "Here, kitty, kitty." A low growl emanated from beneath his desk. Orion crouched down to find the creature wedged into the corner, amber eyes glowing in the shadows. "You shouldn't be moving around," Orion said softly. "Those tissue regenerators need time to work." The creature's ears flicked forward, and it made a chirping sound that raised the hair on Orion's arms. It was trying to communicate. "I'm going to need a name for you," Orion said, extending his hands slowly. "How about Zephyr? You remind me of the night sky on old Earth, all that darkness with bright stars scattered through." The creature, Zephyr, tilted its head, then carefully extended a paw and placed it in Orion's palm. Another jolt passed between them, milder this time, accompanied by a fleeting impression of gratitude. "Are you telepathic?" Orion whispered, amazed. "Is that how you're communicating?" Zephyr blinked slowly, then crawled forward, wincing as the movement pulled at healing wounds. Orion carefully lifted the creature, noting that it weighed far more than its size, suggested dense muscle beneath that silky fur. "Back to bed with you," he said, returning Zephyr to the recovery chamber. "Those weren't regular officials out there. They're looking for you, and they don't seem friendly." Orion checked the dressings, pleased to see the regenerative therapy was working. The wounds were closing cleanly, though several would leave scars beneath the striped fur. Computer-analyzed blood sample, Orion ordered, placing a vial into the diagnostic unit. Compare against all known sentient species in the database. While the system worked, Orion pulled up a chair beside the recovery chamber. 48 stellar cycles without sleep was catching up to him, but he couldn't rest yet. Not with suspicious officials prowling the station, and his mysterious patient still critical. "You're something special, aren't you?" Orion murmured, watching Zephyr's eyes grow heavy. "Someone went to a lot of trouble to hurt you." The creature's paw pressed against the transparent dome, as if reaching for him. Orion placed his palm against the other side, and even through the barrier, he felt a faint connection, a warmth that spread up his arm. Genetic analysis complete. The computer announced, "Sample contains markers consistent with royal bloodline of Philida sapiens, specifically the Orion dynasty, warning possession of genetic material from Orion royalty without explicit consent is a Class 1 diplomatic offense." Orion's blood ran cold. Orion dynasty, the ruling family of the most powerful feline humanoids in the quadrant. If this creature belonged to them, what have I gotten myself into, Zephyr? Orion whispered. The creature's eyes had closed, exhaustion finally winning out. Orion leaned back in his chair, mind racing. He needed to research the Orion dynasty immediately. 3 stellar cycles and 17 restricted database access violations later. Orion had pieced together a troubling picture. The Orion rulers were known to keep companions, highly evolved creatures genetically linked to their owners. These companions were extensions of the royals themselves, sharing a psychic bond and even biological markers. Harming one was equivalent to a direct attack on royalty. Orion's eyes burned with fatigue as he scrolled through images of the current ruling family. The young Empress, Lirai, had recently assumed control following her mother's suspicious death. Political rivals questioned her readiness to rule. There were whispers of impending civil war. His search was interrupted by a station-wide announcement that sent ice through his veins. "Attention, all personnel." Commander Vaylor's voice boomed. "We are honored to announce the arrival of Her Excellency Empress Lyrae of the Orion Dynasty. All section heads report to Docking Bay 1 for formal reception. Security protocols elevated to Level 1. Nyx's eyes snapped open, ears perked forward. The creature tried to stand, making plaintive noises that tore at Orion's heart. "That's your owner, isn't it?" Orion said gently, pressing Nyx back down. "The Baroness herself." Nyx chirped urgently, claws scraping against the chamber dome. Orion made a split-second decision that would change his life forever. "You're not stable enough to move," he said firmly, "and I don't trust those officials who were here earlier. We're going to hide you until I can assess the situation." He deactivated the recovery chamber and carefully lifted Nyx. Computer Medical Emergency Protocol Haze Sigma 9. A section of wall panel slid aside, revealing a small isolation room designed for quarantine cases. Orion had never needed to use it. "It's not comfortable," he apologized, settling Nix onto the padded surface. "But it's shielded from bioscans. No one will find you here until I'm sure it's safe." Nix's eyes held his for a long moment. Then deliberately, the creature leaned forward and pressed its forehead against Orion's. The connection bloomed instantly, stronger than before, carrying impressions of trust and fear and urgency. "I'll protect you," Orion promised, throat tight with an emotion he couldn't name. "Rest now." As he sealed the hidden room, Orion knew he was probably committing a dozen interstellar crimes, hiding the companion of a Baroness, interfering in high politics. He should be terrified. Instead, he felt strangely certain he was doing exactly what he was meant to do. Orion scrubbed his hands, changed into a clean uniform, and headed for the diplomatic reception. It was time to meet the Baroness and determine whether she was a threat to the creature he'd come to care for, or if she was as much a victim as her companion. Either way, life on Vortex Prime would never be the same again. Vortex Prime's main reception hall, typically a utilitarian space used for crew gatherings, had been hastily transformed into something resembling a diplomatic venue. Maintenance drones had polished every surface, and someone had unearthed ceremonial flags that hadn't seen use in decades. Orion stood at the back of the assembled station personnel, fighting to keep his eyes open. 72 stellar cycles without proper sleep was pushing the limits of his stim patches. His thoughts kept drifting to Nix, hidden away in his clinic, wounded and afraid. Commander Valor paced nervously at the front of the room, his usually pristine uniform adorned with additional medals Orion had never seen before. The commander caught Orion's eye and frowned, motioning him forward. "You look like hell," Hayes Valor muttered as Orion approached. "This is a diplomatic reception, not one of your veterinary emergencies." "Sorry, sir," Orion said, stifling a yawn. "Been catching up on bacterial cultures." Valor's retort was cut short by the hiss of the grand doors sliding open. The station's modest security detail formed an honor guard, and a hush fell over the crowd. 4 tall figures entered at first. Feline humanoids with sleek black fur and ceremonial armor, their eyes scanning the room with predatory intensity. The guard stepped to the sides, forming a path for the figure who entered next. Orion's breath caught in his throat. Empress Lyrae was nothing like the dignified, aloof royal he had imagined. She was young, perhaps his age, and moved with a fluid grace that made every human in the room appear awkward by comparison. Her fur was a stunning pattern of white stripes against a silver-gray background, identical to Nix's markings. She wore a form-fitting diplomatic uniform in deep crimson that accentuated every curve, and a simple circlet of some dark metal rested between her elegantly pointed ears. But it was her eyes that held Orion, transfixed, amber irises against black sclera, exactly like her companions. Those eyes swept the room with cool assessment before landing on Commander Valor. "Your Excellency," Valor said, bowing deeply, "Vortex Prime Outpost is honored by your presence. Had we known of your arrival earlier, we would have prepared a more suitable—" "My visit was not planned," Lyrae interrupted, her voice a melodic purr that seemed to vibrate in Orion's chest. "I come seeking something precious that was taken from me." Her accent was exotic but perfect, each word precisely formed. Orion noticed her claws, retractable like Nix's, were partially extended, belying her calm demeanor. "Of course. Your Excellency," Valor stammered, "my security chief informed me of your missing property." I assure you we've conducted thorough scans of the station. A flicker of something annoyance anger crossed Leary's features at the word property. My companion is not property, Commander, she said, each word edged with ice. Nix is an extension of myself. Our bond is sacred. Orion's heart thumped harder at the name, so he'd somehow intuited the creature's real name. Another piece of evidence that some form of telepathic connection had formed between them. My apologies, Your Excellency, Valor said quickly. I've assembled our section heads to assist in your search. All station resources are at your disposal. Leary's gaze slid over the line of officers until it reached Orion. He felt a jolt of awareness pass between them, her pupils dilating slightly as she studied him. "And who might you be?" she asked, stepping closer. Orion was acutely aware of his rumpled appearance and the stubble on his jaw, but he met her gaze steadily. "Dr. Orion Kalin, Your Excellency, station veterinarian and xenobiologist, a healer of animals," she said, the words carrying no trace of the condescension he might have expected. Instead, she seemed intrigued. "Tell me, Dr. Kalin, have you treated any unusual creatures recently?" Every instinct told Orion to lie, to protect Nix until he understood the full situation. But looking into Leary's eyes, so like her companion's, he found he couldn't form the words. "I treat many species that pass through the station," he said carefully. "Some might be considered unusual, depending on one's perspective." A smile curved her lips, revealing the tips of delicate fangs. "Indeed," she said softly, "perspective is everything." One of her guards stepped forward, leaning down to whisper in her ear. Leary's expression hardened. "It seems my advanced team has detected traces of Theresian blood in the station's lower levels," she announced, her gaze never leaving Orion's face near the medical facilities. Commander Valor turned to Orion with narrowed eyes. "Kalin, is there something you'd like to share with Her Excellency?" Orion's mind raced. Nix was hidden in a shielded room. How had they detected anything? Unless the connection between Baroness and companion worked both ways. Perhaps she could sense Nix's presence through their bond. "Your Excellency," Orion said, addressing Leary directly, "I believe we should speak privately about this matter." A ripple of whispers spread through the assembled crew. Commander Valor's face flushed with anger at the breach of protocol. "Dr. Kalin," he sputtered, "you will answer the question directly, or face I will speak with the doctor alone," Leary declared, silencing the commander with a raised hand. "My guards will remain outside." "Your Excellency, I must advise against," one of her guards began. "That wasn't a request, Ravik," she said, her tone brooking no argument. "The doctor and I will use the station's conference room. We are not to be disturbed." The guard named Ravik glowered at Orion with open hostility, but stepped back with a stiff bow. "As you command, Baroness." Commander Valor looked like he might have a seizure, but managed a tight nod. "Of course, Your Excellency. This way, please." As Orion followed Leary from the reception hall, he felt the stares of everyone present burning into his back. Whatever happened next would determine not only his fate, but Nix's as well. He had to tread carefully. The conference room door slid shut behind them, with a soft hiss leaving them alone. Leary immediately abandoned her regal posture, turning to Orion with an intensity that made him step back. "Where is Nix?" she demanded, her calm facade crumbling. "I can feel that he's alive but in pain. What have you done with him?" "I saved his life," Orion replied, meeting her fierce gaze. "He was attacked. Precision energy weapon wounds, designed to cause a slow death." I found him near the outer docks 3 orbital spans ago. Leary's eyes widened, her composure faltering further. 3 orbital spans. He's been missing for a solar rotation, I thought. Her voice broke and she turned away, shoulders trembling. The sight of her vulnerability cracked something in Orion's chest. Without thinking, he reached out, touching her arm gently. He's gonna be okay. I've treated his wounds, and he's responding well to regenerative therapy. She stiffened at his touch, but didn't pull away. Instead, she turned back to face him, and Orion was startled to see moisture glistening in her alien eyes. "Take me to him," she said, no longer a command, but a plea, please. In that moment, Orion knew with certainty that whatever plot had led to Nick's injury, Baroness Lyra was not the architect. The bond between them was genuine, a connection so deep he could almost feel it himself. "This way," he said, leading her toward the door. "But we should avoid your guards. I don't trust them." Lyra's expression darkened. "Nor should you not all who serve me do so willingly." She stepped closer, her scent like exotic spices, and something wild enveloping him. "Dr. Kalin, if you've truly saved Nyx, you have my eternal gratitude. But understand this, we are now both in grave danger." Orion's pulse quickened, a strange mixture of fear and exhilaration coursing through him. "Then we'd better hurry." As they slipped from the conference room, taking a maintenance corridor toward his clinic, Orion realized his life had just become entangled with one of the most powerful beings in the quadrant. And despite every logical reason to be terrified, he couldn't ignore the electric awareness that sparked between them with every shared glance. Dangerous indeed. The medical equipment hummed softly as Orion adjusted the tissue regenerator over Nick's deepest wound. Beside him, Empress Lyrai stood motionless, her amber eyes never leaving her companion's sleeping form. "The molecular pattern is fascinating," Orion said, breaking the tense silence. "Your biology shares key markers with Nyx, but there are distinct differences I've never seen documented." Lyri's ears twitched slightly forward. A just your Orion had begun to recognize as interest. "Our bond is physiological as well as spiritual. The Orionian royal line has maintained companion relationships for 16 generations, like biological quantum entanglement," Orion mused, adjusting the scanner that would explain how you sensed him, despite my shielded room. "You understand quickly for a human," she said, the words carrying no bite, despite their potential for condescension. "Most outsiders view our companions as mere pets or status symbols." Orion smiled tiredly. "I became a veterinarian because I believe all sentient beings deserve care and respect, regardless of form. Intelligence comes in many packages." Something in Lyri's posture softened. "That is refreshing in my court, that such perspective is rare." For 3 orbital spans, they worked together in Orion's clinic, treating Nyx while avoiding Lyri's increasingly suspicious guards. Commander Valor had been told the Baroness was conducting a private investigation, buying them precious time. During the long stellar cycles, their conversations deepened beyond Nyx's care. Orion found himself sharing stories of his childhood on a terraformed agricultural moon where animals outnumbered people 20 to 1. "You chose exile on this station," Lyra asked once, handing him a surgical tool before he could request it. Their rhythm increasingly synchronized. "Not exile purpose," Orion corrected. "Vortex Prime needed a veterinarian. No one else wanted the position. So you sacrificed personal comfort for duty," she observed, helping him dress Nyx's healing wounds. We have that in common, Doctor. Gradually, Lirai revealed the pressure she faced. As a young ruler, the counselors who undermined her authority, the neighboring systems testing her resolve, the constant threat of assassination that had followed her mother's suspicious death. I was meant to study xenobiology, she admitted one night, her voice low as Nyx purred between them. Not rule an empire before my 30th year. Yet here you are, Orion replied, noticing how the overhead lights caught silver highlights in her striped fur, crossing the quadrant for your companion, when most rulers would have sent agents. Nyx is not merely a companion, she said fiercely. He is my heart outside my body. I could no more abandon him than cease breathing. Her passion ignited something in Orion's chest. Admiration mingled with a dangerous warmth he dared not name. Each accidental brush of their hands sent electricity along his nerves. Each shared glance lasted a heartbeat longer than necessary. On the fourth night, Orion caught himself, staring at the elegant line of her throat as she bent over Nyx, his professional detachment crumbling despite his best efforts. You should rest, Leary said, catching his exhausted gaze. You've barely slept since I arrived. I'm fine, he insisted, but swayed slightly on his feet. Her hand caught his arm, steadying him. Through his thin medical uniform, her touch burned like a brand. Even the most dedicated healer requires rest, Doctor. Orion, he corrected softly. If we're hiding from assassins together, you might as well use my name. A smile curved her lips, revealing the delicate points of her fangs. Orion, she repeated, his name a gentle purr in her exotic accent. Something unspoken passed between them, a recognition of boundaries crossed and protocols abandoned, despite every difference between their species, despite the political chasm separating a station veterinarian from a galactic Baroness. The attraction crackling between them was undeniable. Orion knew he was walking a dangerous path. She was Orionian royalty. He was a human exile on a forgotten station. Yet as her amber eyes held his, filled with a warmth that matched the heat that in his own blood, he couldn't bring himself to care. Some things transcended species politics and reason. His neural activity is almost normal, Orion said, studying the holographic display above Nyx's sleeping form. I'd say another 48 stellar cycles of regenerative therapy, and he should be. The clinic door exploded inward with a deafening boom, throwing Orion and Lirai to the floor. Smoke poured into the room as emergency sirens wailed. Containment breach in Medical Sector 3. The station computer announced calmly, security protocols engaged. Orion's ears rang as he pushed himself up, searching frantically for Lirai through the thickening smoke. He found her crouched protectively over Nyx, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead, eyes wide and alert. Stay down, she hissed as shadowy figures moved through the destroyed doorway. Two silhouettes advanced through the smoke, humanoid, but moving with mechanical precision. One raised an arm, and Orion glimpsed the distinctive barrel of a phase disruption blaster. Military grade and highly illegal. Without thinking, Orion lunged for the nearest cabinet, grabbing a canister of aerosol sedative meant for large predator species. As the first assassin took aim at Lirai, Orion hurled the canister with all his strength. The resulting explosion of pressurized gas engulfed the attackers, their mechanical movements faltering as the powerful sedative filled their lungs. But the second assassin managed to fire before collapsing, a bright beam of energy cutting through the smoke directly toward Lirai. She twisted at the last instant, but the beam caught her shoulder, sending her spinning to the floor with a pained cry. Orion scrambled to her side as Nyx let out a keening wail, struggling to rise despite his injuries. "Emergency lockdown," Orion commanded, pressing his hand against the blood flowing from Lyri's wound. "Computer administer emergency protocol, Haze Omega-6. Armored panels slid down over the shattered doorway as medical drones activated, flooding the room with targeted antiseptic mist to clear the air. Oren worked quickly, applying pressure to Lyri's injury while scanning for additional damage. "The same weapon," she gasped, her pupils dilated with pain. "The same signature as Nyx's wounds." Realization dawned like ice water in Orion's veins. This wasn't random. Nyx wasn't collateral damage in some political scheme. He was bait. Lyri nodded grimly, fangs bared in a pained grimace. They knew I would come for him personally. This remote station, minimal security, perfect killing ground. Orion helped her onto an examination table adjacent to Nyx, who had dragged himself closer despite his healing wounds. Distressed growls emanating from his throat. The weapon caused cellular disruption. Orion said, examining the injury, "Standard treatments won't work." "Then I die here," Lyra stated flatly, her composure returning despite the pain. A fitting end for a fool who walked willingly into a trap. "Not on my watch," Orion replied, mind racing through his years of xenobiological research. "There's an experimental therapy I developed for cross-species tissue regeneration. It's risky, but do it," she commanded, her eyes locked on his. "I trust you." Those 3 words hit Orion with unexpected force. He worked with frantic precision, combining compounds never meant for Theresian physiology, praying his theoretical knowledge would translate to practical treatment. The procedure was intimate by necessity, requiring him to monitor her heartbeats manually, to touch her in ways that crossed all boundaries of royal protocol. As he worked, their eyes remained locked, something profound passing between them with each labored breath she took. "My guards," she whispered as the regenerative serum began to take effect. "They must have been compromised." "Commander Valor, too," Orion agreed grimly, examining the unconscious assassins. "These aren't random mercenaries. They're wearing modified Nexus security armor." "The coup has already begun," Lyri said, strength returning to her voice as the treatment worked. "My absence from the palace. They must have seized control already." Nyx pushed his head under her hand, a deep rumble in his chest. Lyri stroked him absently, her political mind clearly racing through calculations. "We need to go," Orion said, gathering emergency supplies. "They'll send more when these 2 don't report back." "Where?" Lyri asked, struggling to sit up. "The entire station is compromised." Orion's mouth curved in a grim smile. "I have a small medical transport for off-station emergencies. It's not much, but it's stocked for extended missions and registered under a research designation, not my name." Lyri's eyes widened. "You would flee with me, become a fugitive from your own people." "I became involved the moment I saved Nyx," Orion replied, helping her stand. "Besides, these aren't my people, if they're willing to assassinate a foreign dignitary." As sirens blared and security announcements echoed through the station, Orion gathered Nyx in his arms, while Lyri, leaning heavily on his shoulder, palmed his emergency medical kit. Their eyes met in silent agreement. They had passed beyond the point of return. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Initiating emergency medical evacuation protocol, Orion announced into the comm unit as he guided the small transport away from Vortex Prime. Patient condition, critical returning when stable. Commander Vaylor's voice crackled through the speakers. Hayes, you're ordered to dock immediately. The Baroness has been... Orion cut the transmission with a sharp gesture. That should buy us a few stellar cycles before they realize we're not coming back. The medical transport, little more than a shuttle with advanced life support systems, hummed around them. Designed for a single medical officer and up to 3 patients, the cramped quarters forced them into constant proximity. Leary sat in the co-pilot's seat, her regal posture incongruous against the utilitarian surroundings. Nixley curled in a makeshift nest between them, his breathing finely even and deep. We should reach the Galarian Nebula within 18 stellar cycles, Orion said, checking the navigation system. There's an unregistered research outpost on asteroid KDX 419 that might shelter us. Leary nodded, her eyes distant. By now my enemies will have secured the palace. My loyal counselors imprisoned or executed, decades of progress gone. Her hands trembled slightly before she clenched them into fists. Your people still need you, Orion said gently. We'll find a way back. She turned to him, vulnerability naked in her amber eyes. Why are you doing this? You could have handed me over, claimed a reward, lived in luxury. That's not who I am, he replied simply. Besides, I've grown rather fond of Nick's package deal, right? A smile ghosted across her features before fading. She reached out, touching the stubbled line of his jaw with surprising gentleness. You are a strange human, Orion Hayes. The small vessel carried them through the darkness of space. Automated systems humming as they tended to Nix's remaining wounds. Together, the mundane tasks, changing dressings, administering medication, monitoring vital signs, created a strange domesticity in their shared exile. Slowly, Leary's formal veneer cracked. She shed her elaborate diplomatic uniform for simple medical scrubs. Without the trappings of royalty, she seemed younger, more accessible. She asked endless questions about Orion's Wasak, his childhood, his dreams, as if cataloging everything about this human who had upended her existence. In turn, Orion glimpsed the person beneath the Baroness, a brilliant mind with a passion for xenobiology that matched his own, a leader who had sacrificed personal ambitions for duty, a woman who hummed ancient Aurian lullabies to Nyx when she thought Orion couldn't hear. On the third night of their journey, as the ship's lights dimmed to simulate evening, Orion found Leary trembling in the small galley area, a medical scanner clutched in her hands. What's wrong? He asked immediately, alert. Nyx's neural readings, she whispered. They're fluctuating. I can feel him pulling away. Orion quickly checked the scanner, relief washing through him. It's normal. His autonomous systems are finally reasserting. He's healing, becoming independent again. He took her hands in his. It's good news, Leary. I thought I was losing him, she confessed, her customary strength crumbling. After everything, I couldn't bear it. Without thinking, Orion pulled her against him, one hand stroking the soft fur between her ears as she shuddered with silent sobs. The contact was electric. Her body radiated heat, her heartbeat strong and quick against his chest. You're not alone, he murmured against her ear. I won't let you face this alone. She pulled back slightly, those alien eyes, searching his face. In my culture, she said softly, such a declaration would be binding. The air between them charged with unspoken possibility. Orion knew he should step back, maintain professional distance. She was his patient's owner, a political refugee, a member of a different species entirely. Yet as her hand slid up his chest, as her head tilted in unmistakable invitation, rational thought abandoned him completely. Their first kiss was tentative, a careful exploration of alien territory. Her lips were softer than he expected, the points of her fangs a delicate danger against his tongue. She tasted of spices he couldn't name, her purr of pleasure vibrating through their connected bodies. When they finally separated, breathless and startled by their own actions, Nix watched them from his medical bed with what Orion could have sworn was feline approval. "This complicates things," Orion said, his voice rough. Lyrae's answering laugh held a wildness that sent shivers down his spine. "My dear doctor," she whispered, claws lightly tracing patterns on his nape. "Things were complicated the moment you saved my heart." She drew him back to her, and Orion went willingly, leaving caution behind in the vast darkness of space, surrounding their tiny vessel. The settlement of New Harmony sprawled across the valley floor, a hodgepodge of architectural styles, reflecting the mixed species who called it home. From the ridge where they'd landed, their disguised medical transport, Orion could see housing units built for a dozen different physiologies, all coexisting in apparent peace. "Are you sure we'll be welcome?" Lyrae asked, adjusting the simple cloak that concealed her distinctive markings. Nix prowled at her feet, fully recovered and alerted to any danger. New Harmony was founded by deserters and refugees from the last border war, Orion explained, shouldering their meager possessions. "Their only rule is that old conflicts stay behind. No one asks where you came from or why you left." Their rented dwelling was modest, a single-story structure with adaptable environmental controls in a small garden enclosed by living bamboo. Not the palace Lyrae deserved, but safety was their priority now. Days melted into solar rotations as they established a routine. Orion found work at the settlement's medical center, his knowledge of multiple species making him valuable. Lyrae, using a modified identity, offered translation services, her natural diplomatic skills earning them extra credits and connections. In the evenings, they explored their new relationship with careful wonder. Every discovery was a delight. The sensitive spots at the base of her ears that made her purr, the way her pupils expanded when she was aroused, the surprising strength in her lithe form. I never imagined finding happiness in exile. Lyrae confessed one night as they lay intertwined, her fur cool against his skin. "Among my people, rulers made for political advantage, not this." "And what is this exactly?" Orion asked, tracing the stripes along her shoulder. She considered, head tilted in that distinctly feline way. "Freedom," she finally said. "With you, I am simply Lyrae, not Baroness, not ruler, not symbol." It wasn't all perfect. Cultural misunderstandings sparked occasional arguments, her royal expectations clashing with his practical nature, her territorial instincts conflicting with his human boundaries, yet each reconciliation brought deeper understanding. Orion found joy in introducing Lyrae to experiences her sheltered royal upbringing had denied her. Together they waited in the settlement's central lake, her initial disgust at the sensation of mud between her toes transforming into childlike delight. He taught her to cook simple meals, laughing at her fastidious approach to handling ingredients. She in turn shared the cultural richness of her world, teaching him meditative techniques practiced by Orionian philosophers, recounting ancient legends beneath the strange stars of their adopted home. "My royal tutors would be scandalized," she said one afternoon as they shopped in the settlement's bustling market, her hand casually entwined with his. a Orionian Baroness, haggling over produce prices, scandalized by the haggling or by the human holding your hand. Orion teased. Her smile turned wistful. Both our traditions are rigid. Interspecies relationships exist but are never acknowledged in the upper echelons of society. She selected a purple fruit, examining it with expert care. My grandmother would have you executed for touching me. Charming family, Orion remarked dryly. Yet those same traditions are strangling our development. Lyra continued, her political mind never truly at rest. Our isolation has led to stagnation. We need fresh perspectives, new alliances. Orion recognized the shift in her tone, the ruler re-emerging from behind the exile's mask. These moments happened more frequently as the solar rotations passed. No matter how she embraced their simple life, Lyra was born to lead, and that calling tugged at her conscience. One evening as twin moons rose over New Harmony, they sat in their small garden while Nyx hunted insects in the flowering bushes. Lyra's silence held an unusual weight. "You're thinking about home again," Orion observed. Not a question. She nodded, ears flicking restlessly. "My people deserve better than usurpers and assassins. The longer I hide, the stronger my enemies grow." Orion took her hand, feeling the careful retraction of her claws, a constant consideration for his frailer human skin. "Do you regret this?" he asked quietly. "Us?" Her eyes flashed in the moonlight. "Never," she said fiercely. "You and Nyx are my true home now." "But," she paused, searching for words. "What if I could have both? What if we could change things?" "You mean return?" Orion's heart tightened. "The same people who tried to kill you are still in power." "Yes, but they don't hold the people's loyalty." She countered, the strategic ruler emerging fully now. "The Orionian populace reveres tradition, but they also hunger for prosperity. If I returned with new philosophies, new alliances, if I showed them that cooperation with other species brings strength, the implications hung between them. Return would mean danger, politics, and scrutiny. Their relationship, born in crisis and nurtured in exile, would face its greatest test under the harsh lights of galactic politics. "Whatever you decide," Orion said, drawing her close, "we face it together." As if understanding the weight of the moment, Nyx abandoned his hunt to press against them both, forming a circle of warmth against the cool night air. For now, their haven remained secure. But Orion knew the peaceful interlude couldn't last forever. The ruler would eventually need to reclaim her throne, and when that orbital span came, he would stand beside her, regardless of the consequences. The warning came at dawn, a coded message from one of Lyra's loyal retainers who had finally tracked them to New Harmony. 3 ships had entered the system, their energy signatures matching known vessels used by the usurpers who had seized control of the Orionian throne. "They found us," Lyra said, already moving with practiced efficiency, gathering only essential items. "We have less than 2 stellar cycles." Orion disabled the dwelling systems, erasing all evidence of their presence, while Lyra encrypted their communication channels. Nyx paced restlessly, sensing their urgency. "The medical transport is too recognizable now," Orion said, checking his portable scanner. "We need alternative transportation." Lyra's eyes glinted with familiar determination. "I have an idea." An stellar cycle later, they were aboard the obsidian hauler, hiding among refuse containers bound for the neighboring mining colony. The stench was overwhelming, but the ship's radiation signature masked their life signs from standard scanners. "Elegant accommodations, Your Excellency," Orion quipped, trying to lighten the mood as they huddled in the cramped maintenance compartment. Leary's answering smile was tight but genuine. "Still better than some diplomatic functions I've attended." Through the viewport, they watched 3 sleek military vessels descend on New Harmony, their silhouettes predatory against the dawn sky. Their peaceful interlude was officially over. The waste transport docked at Haggard's Point, a grimy mining operation where questions were discouraged and credits were the only language universally understood. They bartered passage on a series of increasingly disreputable vessels, zigzagging across the sector to confuse pursuit. During their flight, Leary made contact with her remaining loyal network. The news grew progressively worse. Her cousin Admiral Korath, the same guard who had accompanied her to Vortex Prime, had declared himself regent. Public executions of her supporters had become commonplace. Orionian treaties with neighboring systems were being systematically dismantled. "He's isolating our people, making them dependent on his protection," Leary growled, pacing the narrow confines of their latest temporary shelter. A decommissioned communications relay, classic authoritarian tactics. Orion monitored the secured channel, noting the increasing urgency in the encrypted messages. "Your loyalists are growing desperate. Without your return, they'll eventually lose hope." An alert chimed on their scanner, ships approaching the relay station's orbit. Orion grabbed his medical bag, already moving toward their escape route, when the relay's ancient doors groaned and collapsed inward. Armored figures poured into the chamber, weapons raised. Nick snarled, positioning himself protectively before Leary as Orion reached for the small phase disruption blaster they'd acquired during their journey. "Wait," Leary commanded, her voice cutting through the tension. "Examine their insignia." Orion paused, noticing the subtle markings on the intruder's armor. Not Admiral Korath's usurped royal seal, but an older emblem. The lead figure removed her helmet, revealing feline features marked with ceremonial scars. Captain Vela Leary breathed, lowering her defensive stance. "My mother's royal guard. My Baroness," the commander replied, dropping to one knee. "We've been searching for you since the coup." The resistance grows beneath Admiral Korath's notice. Within stellar cycles, they were aboard the Shadow Claw, a sleek vessel hidden from official records. Leary immersed herself in tactical briefings with her loyal commanders, while Orion found himself suddenly an outsider, a human among Orionians who regarded him with suspicion. Despite Leary's obvious trust, late into the ship's artificial night cycle, Leary found him in his assigned quarters, exhaustion etched in the droop of her ears. "They don't trust me," Orion said without preamble. "They don't know you," she corrected, sinking onto the bed beside him. "But they will. You've shown more courage than most of my lifelong advisors." Indeed, throughout their harrowing escape, Orion had revealed depths that surprised even himself. When mercenaries had cornered them on Hextide Station, it was his knowledge of ventilation systems that had saved them. When Leary had fallen ill from radiation exposure, his improvised treatments had preserved her life. With each crisis, the unassuming veterinarian had proven himself worthy of standing beside a galactic ruler. "Your commander believes returning to Theritia is suicide," Orion noted, recalling the heated discussions he'd overheard. "It is," Leary agreed calmly, "if we approach conventionally, but I've been thinking about your medical transport's emergency protocols, the way you reprogrammed it to register as a research vessel." Orion raised an eyebrow. "You want to use medical credentials to infiltrate a military blockade?" Her smile was pure predator. Precisely, a pandemic is spreading through the lower levels of the capital. Ravik will need specialists, even alien ones. The audacity of her plan took Orion's breath away. Yet as she outlined the details, he recognized its brilliance. His medical knowledge, once merely his profession, had become their most powerful weapon. It could work, he admitted, mind racing through the biological implications, but we'd need a convincing pathogen, something alarming enough to guarantee our entry, but controllable enough to prevent actual harm. That, she said, eyes gleaming, is why I need you not just as my companion, but as a partner in this fight. The word companion carried weight beyond its ordinary meaning, a deliberate echo of her bond with Nyx, an acknowledgement of something profound and permanent between them. I'm just a veterinarian, Orion said softly, not a revolutionary. Lyri took his face between her hands, her claws carefully retracted. You were never just anything, Orion Kalin. You saved my heart twice over, first Nyx, then me. Her forehead pressed against his in the Theresian gesture of deepest intimacy. Now help me save my people. As the Shadow Claw accelerated toward Theresian space, Orion knew they were heading into the heart of danger. Yet for the first time since leaving Vortex Prime, he felt a certainty that transcended fear. Whatever awaited them in the capital, they would face it together. The unlikely veterinarian and his royal mate, rewriting the story of two worlds. The quantum evacuation vessel descended through Orion Prime's atmosphere, its exterior emblazoned with universal quarantine symbols. Inside, Orion adjusted his environmental suit, the helmet obscuring his human features. Beside him, Lyri, similarly disguised, reviewed the falsified credentials that identified them as specialists from the Galactic Health Consortium. Approaching Royal Medical Facility. Commander Lyra's voice came through their secure comms. Remember, we can only maintain this deception for 12 stellar cycles before the pathogen is recognized as benign. The pathogen in question, Orion's creation, was a modified version of a common feline respiratory virus, engineered to present alarming symptoms while causing no lasting damage. It had been selectively released in the capital's lower levels, 3 orbital spans earlier, creating precisely the emergency they needed to gain entry. Ravik will be suspicious, Lyri murmured as the shuttle touched down on the palace's medical landing pad. He knows I wouldn't abandon my people, which is exactly why we're entering through the most heavily guarded facility. Orion replied, checking his medical equipment, each piece concealing weapons or tools for their true mission. He'll expect subterfuge, not a frontal approach. Royal guards escorted them through decontamination and into the heart of the palace medical wing. Orion noted with clinical detachment how many citizens filled the beds. Ravik had allowed the outbreak to spread, prioritizing security over public health. Our first priority is assessing containment protocols, Orion announced to the harried medical staff, his voice altered by his helmet's vocoder. We'll need access to environmental systems and population distribution data. The senior physician, a Orionian female with graying fur, hesitated. Those systems are under military control now. Regent Ravik's orders. Unacceptable. Lyri stated, her disguised voice carrying the authority she'd been born to wield. Consortium protocols supersede local governance during Class 3 outbreaks, or would the Regent prefer we declare a sector-wide emergency? The physician's ears flattened in submission. I'll arrange access. Within stellar cycles, they had mapped the palace's security systems, and confirmed the location of loyal staff who had survived Ravik's purges. Captain Vela's team, disguised as medical support personnel, strategically positioned themselves throughout the complex as night fell. Orion and Lyrae made their way to the Central Environmental Control Hub, the nexus from which they could implement the next phase of their plan. "Security checkpoint ahead," Orion warned, noting the armed guards, 2 centuries military-grade weapons. Lyrae's posture shifted subtly. "Follow my lead." She stumbled forward, her breathing suddenly labored and audible through her suit's external speakers. Orion rushed to support her, calling out in alarm. "Medical emergency containment breach." The guards stepped back instinctively, the fear of contagion overriding their training. Orion used the distraction to deploy a localized nerve agent, carefully calibrated, to render the guards unconscious without permanent harm. His veterinary knowledge, originally meant for healing, had proven unexpectedly valuable in combat situations. Inside the control room, they worked with practiced efficiency, Lyrae overriding security protocols while Orion prepared the modified atmospheric controls that would deliver Captain Vela's signal, a subtle change in the palace's ambient temperature that would alert their allies to begin the coordinated uprising. "Intruders in environmental control," a mechanical voice suddenly announced throughout the facility. "Security lockdown initiated." "We've been compromised." Lyrae snarled fingers, flying over the control panel. Ravik must have upgraded the biometric sensors. Orion completed the temperature adjustments just as the first explosion rocked the palace. Their allies had begun the assault, early adaptation, rather than abandonment of their plan. "We need to reach the Grand Council chamber," Lyrae said, discarding her cumbersome disguise. "With evidence of Ravik's treason, I can invoke the ancient right of challenge." They fought their way through increasingly chaotic corridors, loyalists clashing with Ravik's forces as the carefully orchestrated rebellion unfolded. Orion's medical training served a grim purpose as he targeted pressure points and vulnerable anatomy with precision, incapacitating opponents with minimal force. Outside the council chamber, they found Captain Vela wounded, but standing guard, a circle of fallen enemies surrounding her position. Ravik is inside with the remaining council members. She reported blood matting her dark fur. He's threatening executions if the rebellion isn't crushed immediately. Lyrae's eyes met Orion's, a silent communication passing between them. The culmination of months of shared danger and intimate understanding. "I'll create a distraction at the service entrance," Orion said, checking his remaining equipment. "You challenge him directly, as tradition demands. He'll kill you." Lyrae growled, claws extending involuntarily. Orion smiled grimly. "He'll try." Before she could object further, he kissed her fiercely, heedless of Captain Vela's startled expression, and disappeared down a side corridor minutes later as Lyrae burst through the chamber's main doors with Captain Vela at her side. The emergency ventilation system exploded in a cascade of smoke and debris. Through the chaos, Orion slipped inside, positioning himself among the panicked counselors. Ravik stood on the ceremonial platform, his ornate regalia failing to disguise the madness in his eyes. "The traitor returns," he snarled, drawing in ceremonial blade. "Come to die with your remaining supporters, cousin. I come to reclaim what is mine, by right of blood and law." Lyrae replied, her voice carrying throughout the chamber. "I challenge you under the ancient right." Ravik's laugh was hollow. "Challenge. You bring a wounded commander and expect to overthrow me. My forces control the capital." "Not anymore," Captain Vela stated, activating a holographic display showing Ravik's troops surrendering throughout the palace. "Your mercenaries abandon you as we speak." Ravik's composure cracked. With a feral scream, he lunged at Leary blade, slashing toward her throat. She sidestepped. With the fluid grace Orion had come to adore. But Ravik's second hidden weapon, an energy pistol, appeared in his hand, aimed at her heart. Orion moved without conscious thought. Years of precise medical work, translating to perfect aim as he threw a surgical scalpel. The blade embedded itself in Ravik's wrist, the energy pistol discharging harmlessly into the ceiling as he howled in pain. "Interference!" Ravik shrieked. "An alien intervenes in sacred combat. The challenge is invalid." "Not interference," Leary corrected, advancing on her wounded cousin. "Alliance, Dr. Kalen, acts as my lawful companion, just as Zephyr does." On cue, the striped creature padded into the chamber, taking position beside Orion. The ancient laws make no specification about the species of one's companions. A murmur ran through the gathered counselors, a technical reading of their most sacred traditions that none could dispute. With calculated precision, Leary disarmed her cousin and forced him to his knees. "The council will judge your crimes," she declared, "but the people will witness your shame." As royal guards loyal to Leary secured, Ravik Orion stepped forward to stand beside her, no longer hidden, no longer in disguise. His human presence on the ceremonial platform sent another ripple of shock through the assembly. "Counselors of Orionis Leary," announced her voice, steady and clear. "I present to you Dr. Orion Kalen, the man who saved your rightful ruler, who helped devise the strategy that liberated our capital, who stands as living proof that our future lies in cooperation, not isolation." One by one, the counselors bowed their heads. In that silent, hallowed moment, destiny and duty converged as Dr. Orion Kalen stepped forward to stand beside Leary, his human resolve intertwining with her royal legacy, with the rebellion now affirmed, and the old regime crumbling beneath the weight of truth. The assembled assembly recognized a future born not of tradition, but of transformative unity. A future where the bond between a simple veterinarian and a defiant Baroness would illuminate a path toward healing, not just bodies, but entire worlds. Outside, beneath a cosmos that whispered of infinite hope, Leary and Orion exchanged a final determined glance, sealing their vow to forge a new era of compassion and strength that would echo through the ages.